The year was 1754, and Versailles sparkled as the beating heart of Bourbon glory. In a lavish palace adorned with gold, mirrors, and the echoes of power, a boy was born, Louis Auguste, the second son of the Dauphin of France. He was shy, timid, soft-spoken. While his grandfather Louis XV indulged in pleasures of the flesh, the young Louis buried himself in books. He was no natural prince. He stammered when he spoke, was awkward in courtly manners, and struggled to project authority. Tutors often found him intelligent but insecure, moral but indecisive, qualities that would shape a tragic future. Then fate intervened. The sudden death of his elder brother thrust Louis into the spotlight. He was now heir to the most powerful throne in Europe, a throne gilded with tradition, but rotting at the core. At 15, he was married to a foreign princess, Marie Antoinette of Austria. Their union was political, designed to heal the rift between France and Austria after the bloody 7 Years' War. Versailles celebrated the wedding with feasts, music, and fireworks. But behind the smiling masks, the people grumbled. Bread prices were rising, debt was swelling, and a quiet fury brewed in the streets of Paris. In 1774, King Louis XV, the once beloved, died of smallpox, abandoned by all. At just 20 years old, Louis Auguste became Louis XVI, King of France. He wept during his coronation. "I feel the weight of a crown I did not seek," he whispered. At first there was hope. Louis XVI seemed to care for his people. He cut expenses at court, opened the grain markets, and promised reform. He was a man of principle, devoted to Enlightenment ideals and the well-being of his subjects. But France was drowning in debt. Years of war had drained the treasury, and the lavish court consumed wealth like fire-devoured wood. Attempts at reform, led by brilliant but doomed ministers like Turgot and Necker, failed. The nobility resisted taxation, the clergy defended their privileges, and the king hesitated. His greatest flaw was not cruelty, but indecision. Meanwhile, Marie Antoinette became the subject of scorn. Known as Madame Deficit, she was accused, often falsely, of spending wildly while peasants starved. Her extravagant dresses, gambling, and the infamous diamond necklace scandal sealed her image as an out-of-touch queen. In 1789, the dam broke. Food shortages, record inflation, Enlightenment ideas spreading like wildfire. The Estates General, a dormant political body, was summoned for the first time in 175 years. But it unleashed something uncontrollable. The Third Estate, the common people, broke away and declared themselves the National Assembly. Then came the storming of the Bastille. The people of Paris, armed with rage and muskets, tore down the medieval fortress stone by stone. It was more than a prison. It was a symbol that the people had risen and the king had fallen. The revolution had begun, but Louis remained paralyzed. He hesitated between compromise and resistance. He agreed to the Declaration of the Rights of Man, but kept Swiss guards at Versailles. He accepted a constitutional monarchy, but plotted escape. In October 1789, thousands of women marched from Paris to Versailles. Armed with pikes and fury, they demanded bread and the king's return. That night, the royal family was forced to abandon Versailles and move to the Tuileries Palace in Paris under virtual house arrest. Louis was no longer a sovereign. He was a captive of the people. But in June 1791, he tried to flee. Disguised as a servant, he and his family attempted to escape to Austria. The plan was simple: reach loyalist territory and return with foreign support. But at Varennes, they were recognized by a local postmaster. The royal carriage was stopped. the king, arrested. The escape shattered what little faith remained. If he could not be trusted, then he was no longer the father of the nation. Trust turned into fury. Suspicion turned into hatred. When he was escorted back to Paris, the crowd watched in silence. No cheers, no cries. Just silence, like a nation holding its breath. The year was 1789. France was a kingdom on the edge of collapse. For decades, the monarchy had lived beyond its means. Wars in America, extravagant court life at Versailles, and an unfair taxation system had drained the royal treasury. Bread prices soared. Hunger spread like a plague. Meanwhile, nobles danced in marble halls, and the king, well-meaning but indecisive, struggled to comprehend the depth of the crisis. Louis XVI had summoned the Estates General, a rare and ancient assembly of France's three social classes. He believed he could manage the crisis with reforms. But what walked into that chamber was not compromise, it was revolution. The Third Estate, representing the common people, broke away. They formed the National Assembly. They swore an oath not to disband until France had a constitution. The king hesitated, then relented, but the tides had turned. Paris exploded in violence. On July 14th, 1789, revolutionaries stormed the Bastille, a symbol of royal tyranny. Heads were paraded on pikes. The king's authority evaporated with the gunpowder smoke. At Versailles, Louis was stunned. He asked a question historians still echo today. Is it a revolt? No, sire, came the reply. It is a revolution. From that moment forward, the King of France would no longer command by divine right, but by permission of the people. In October 1789, the people came for him. Thousands of women marched from Paris to Versailles, demanding bread and justice. They broke into the palace, bloodied guards, and forced the royal family to move to the Tuileries Palace in Paris. The Sun King's descendants were now prisoners in the heart of the city. Louis tried to govern. He signed decrees, made public appearances, and played the role of constitutional monarch. But behind closed doors, his faith in divine rule remained unshaken. He corresponded secretly with foreign powers. He plotted escape. He listened to his wife, Marie Antoinette, who urged him to flee, to restore royal power from beyond the borders of France. And so, on a moonless June night in 1791, the king disguised himself as a servant and slipped out of Paris. With his queen, his children, and loyal guards, he made a break for the frontier. But at Varennes, the plan collapsed. A postmaster recognized the king's face from a coin. Louis was arrested, humiliated, and dragged back to Paris in silence as the people lined the roads in eerie quiet, watching the fall of majesty in real time. When the gates of the Tuileries closed behind him once more, he was no longer a monarch in the eyes of the people. He was a traitor, a symbol of betrayal. And in the shadow of Varennes, France would decide there was no room for kings at all. The monarchy was abolished. France declared itself a republic. Louis XVI, once His Most Christian Majesty, was now Louis Capet, a citizen, stripped of all titles. But his fate was far from ordinary. The National Convention debated not just his guilt, but his very existence. Could a republic coexist with a dethroned king? Could liberty breathe while royalty lingered? Evidence was presented, letters, secret documents, and accounts of his attempted flight, his correspondence with Austria, his suspected betrayal of the revolution. Louis stood trial not in chains, but in plain woolen clothes, calm and composed. He did not deny his actions. He defended his intentions. "I am innocent," he declared. "I always wanted what was best for France." But it was not enough. The convention voted, 693 deputies, nearly all agreeing that the former king was guilty of conspiracy against the liberty of the nation. Then came the second vote, death. By a narrow margin, the guillotine was chosen. Not exile, not imprisonment, death. On January 20th, 1793, Louis XVI was informed of his sentence. He was to die the next morning. He asked for two final things: a priest loyal to Rome and time with his family. That night, the walls of the temple prison bore witness to a father's final goodbye. He embraced his children, kissed his son's forehead and whispered, "I will see you again, if not in this life, then in the next." To his queen, he said nothing. Words failed. Eyes spoke what the heart could not. Dawn broke cold over Paris, January 21st, 1793. The city was silent. No church bells rang. Drums rolled through the streets as guards escorted the former king to the scaffold at the Place de la Révolution. He wore a white shirt and a calm expression. His hair had been cut short. The man once draped in robes of gold now stood beneath a grey sky, surrounded by the people he once ruled. The guillotine loomed, a grim invention of egalitarian death. As he climbed the wooden steps, Louis turned to the crowd and spoke with unexpected strength. "I die innocent of the crimes imputed to me. I pardon those who have occasioned my death. I pray that my blood may cement the happiness of my people." The executioner tried to bind his hands. Louis resisted briefly, then submitted. He laid his head on the block, and then the blade fell. The sound was final. The silence afterward, eternal. Some wept, some cheered, some vomited from the horror. But all understood one thing. The age of kings had ended. The divine right had been severed by the steel of the people. A monarch died, not on a battlefield, not in exile, but on a public stage, as a citizen of a republic that had no more use for thrones. France was never the same. The guillotine would not stop with Louis. His queen would follow. Then nobles, revolutionaries, even those who had once demanded liberty. The revolution devoured its children. And yet, Louis XVI's death marked a threshold in human history. He was not a tyrant like Nero, nor a mad king like Caligula. He was, in many ways, a good man in the wrong time, a king who hesitated too often, who failed to reform until it was too late. But his death was not only personal, it was symbolic. The execution of Louis XVI signalled to all monarchs of Europe that no crown was safe, no sceptre untouchable, that the people, once awakened, could rise against centuries of tradition and bring even the mightiest to their knees. In the years to come, Louis would be viewed in many lights: martyr, fool, victim, tyrant. But one truth remains. On a winter morning in Paris, the last king of the Ancien Regime laid down his head, and the world of divine monarchy ended with a thud of iron